Hey everybody, it's James here, and welcome to another edition of Tip Tuesday, where we like to pick some of the top experts in the real estate world and ask them all about what their specific area of expertise is. So, in anticipation of this month's Mogul Mastermind being all about renovation projects, home maintenance, etc., we're going to get a little bit of a conversation going here with one of our project contractors, Mr. Travis Fitch from Travi Enterprises. Travis, how are you doing?
I'm good, James. How are you, sir?
Oh, I'm having a great day, and thank you so much for carving out a bit of time in your super busy day to share with people some of the things they need to know when they're doing some renovations.
I'm glad to be here.
Awesome. Well, hey, you know what? For those of you who are watching, an important thing to keep in mind, Travis and I were actually just chatting about this before we went live, is that not all tired old houses are created equal. Now, when you're just getting into thinking about flipping a house or potentially doing the BRRRR technique or the flip to yourself, basically renovating a house to keep as an income property, it's easy to assume when you're new that if the house is old, tired, trashed, worn out, beat up, that hey, it makes sense as a target. But there are some things you want to see in an old house, and there are some things that you don't want to see. And that's what we're going to talk about today. So, the format we're going to follow is we're actually going to go through what I'm going to call the big three, the three most expensive parts about any renovation, which are kitchen, bathroom, and exterior curb appeal. Now, what we're going to get into is we're going to talk about what you want to see when you're looking at a house and thinking about it being a potential flip target, and the kind of things where you're like, it might be better to avoid this one because obviously you have selection, you have options, so you want to pick the right one because if you pick the right house, you're setting yourself up for a great experience. So Travis, are you ready to get into it?
Yes, sir.
Awesome. Okay, well let's start with the big centerpiece of any interior, which is the kitchen. So my first question is, like, when we're looking at a house that we're thinking about doing a renovation to, what are some things in a kitchen where you see it and you're like, maybe this is not the one?
Some of the things that point out right away when you walk into a potential home is
Hmm.
kitchen layout, what the what the original builders did, especially with homes from the 70s and 80s, where there was much more of a closed concept
Right.
to kitchens and dining rooms and things like that. People really tend to like open spaces and that
Hmm.
open concept thing now. That's what everyone wants to see in the renovations. So lots of these older homes will deter people right away if you see a layout um, that would mean removing walls and moving things around, which would add to your project considerably if you'd have to take something like that on. Lots of the kitchens are
Yeah.
smaller in the older homes and don't quite fit, large families, that kind of
Right.
thing.
Right.
That would be the first and foremost.
Well, and if
Um,
I can jump in there, I mean, anybody who's watched a little Home and Garden TV, it just looks so easy with TV magic to just knock this wall out and open this up. But and I know it's not as easy as it looks. So, how do we look at a space and determine whether it's a nightmare to move a wall or whether it's actually doable?
the biggest thing with moving walls is finding out what is supporting what. If you have, let's say a corner of one of your walls that you want to move out is a supporting beam, then you have
Hmm.
to look really closely and talk to the right people, including, a structural engineer, that kind of thing,
Right.
to see if it's plausible to do something, for example, adding a support beam across
Mm.
instead of having this post in the middle of your wall that you're trying to take down. And sometimes, you can get away with removing walls that aren't really supporting any real weight in the house as it is. So the big thing, it's hard to know right away just by walking into a house and looking at it. It's usually you have to open up a wall or two to really see what's going on. Um, I always like personally, and not everyone's going to do this, but I like crawling up into the attic of most
Hmm.
spaces, and you can get a good layout of what is a support beam at that point if you know what you're looking for.
Right.
Um, but until you open up a wall and see what is supporting what, that's the main factor that you have to keep in mind when you're thinking about removing walls.
Right. And I hear you say get an engineer, put in a support beam, put in a support. That's all expensive stuff compared to the
Yes.
cosmetic work that's actually going to make you money. So,
Yes.
um, you know, when we're looking at a house, most homeowners aren't going to let you start opening up walls before you bought their house. So, you know, you said going up into the attic. Are there any other ways where we can get clues of which walls are easy to move and which ones aren't?
The best way at that point is getting blueprints of the house. The older homes are obviously a lot harder to get that kind of thing.
Right.
Um, some people keep records, some people don't. Just in the home that we just moved into, we lucked out and found the records, the blueprints from 1973 when the house was first built, and we
Wow.
found the entire framing layout, right then and there. So that's really lucky. Um, Other than that, and doing some homework or getting a home inspector in there to do that work and crawl through and figure out exactly what's supporting what, you won't really know until you open up a wall and do a bit of homework.
Got it. Got it. Got it. Okay. No, that's great information. Let's move into our next item of the big three. So we're looking at a bathroom, and I mean, we've all seen old bathrooms that are dated with the funky colored toilets and tubs. We've also seen nasty bathrooms and sketchy houses that are just filthy beyond recognition. But
Yeah.
when we're now we're thinking about the bathroom, like what should we look for where we think, okay, this bathroom is going to be pretty inexpensive to do bang for buck wise, and what should we look out for where now all of a sudden, hey, this could add up quick and maybe it's not the right one.
For bathrooms, in my experience, the big culprit is always the plumbing. If
Okay.
you can see what's going on underneath the sink, usually if someone's not maintaining the plumbing or not repairing anything properly or have done a fix improperly to begin with,
Mm-hmm.
that stuff sticks out. You've got leaks, you've got stains, you've got corrosion on the pipes, in that kind of thing. It also tells you a lot on what kind of piping is there. If it's old copper piping, if it's the newer, ABS black plastic piping, or if you're using, uh, you know, uh, the rubber tubing instead of the old mesh metal hoses, that kind of thing. It'll show you when things were worked on and how they were worked on. Like, it's hard
Right.
to look at the plumbing behind a bathtub, obviously, without opening up walls. But if you can see the connections for the toilet and the sink, that usually gives you a heads up on kind of what condition you can expect the plumbing to be in. Because more often
Right.
than not, the bathrooms have water damage in worst case scenarios. So the bathtub is leaking, or the toilet is leaking, or the sink is leaking, and that dominoes into problems of mold and stuff in the floors or in the walls or behind areas that you can't really see right
Mm,
away. So in the bathrooms, it's super important to comb through to look for any sort of water damage or improper installation of plumbing.
got it. Yeah, because I mean that water damage. Now instead of just doing the cosmetic work, we're picking apart the structure, which adds to the cost. So that
Yes, and
is
the
that is something
time.
that really makes sense to keep your head up and keep an eye out for. Well,
Never
let's
forget about the mold issue that could potentially crop up in bathrooms that aren't being taken care of, because those
right.
guys, mold remediation is not cheap.
Not cheap. That's true. All right, let's look at the third item of our big three. Let's step outside. So we're standing on the sidewalk. We're looking at this house. Um, the curb appeal is very complex because that could be everything from the shingles right down to the sidewalk around the side, right down to the bushes that are, the landscaping or whatever. So again,
Mhm.
what are we trying to keep an eye out for? Like, let's say we're standing at the front of the house, we're looking at it. What are good signs and what are signs that this could be a super expensive curb appeal exterior work?
Let's talk about the things that I would be worried about seeing right away. There's two
Okay.
items that pop up right away. The first is the roof,
Mm-hmm.
because if the roof is in bad condition, then obviously, again, I like to use the phrase domino effect. It can domino into all sorts of problems down the road if you've got a leaky roof, or if there was problems in the past that didn't get patched
Mm-hmm.
up correctly, that kind
Right.
of thing.
Got
So
it.
the roof is number one, and the second is the windows.
Okay.
The condition of the windows, the age of the windows, because windows that are more than 15 years old are not the same type that you'll see in every other home. They're not sealed properly, they leak heat.
Yeah.
You might as well have the windows open in the middle of winter kind of
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
mentality. New windows are completely different products nowadays with proper sealants and UV protection. There's tons and tons of options. So if you see windows that have been done in the last even 10 years as compared to windows that are 30 years old, that is a huge, huge part of the exterior of a house, because replacing windows and replacing a roof are always very expensive.
Very expensive. And we see a lot of houses where cosmetically they're super dated inside and just right for reno, but the person who's owned the house still wants to maintain the property. So you'll see
Mm.
it's not as rare as you think where it's like shingles and windows are done, but cosmetically, that's the work that's required. So yeah, I definitely agree where that's something to keep an eye out for when you're selecting a target. Um, well, that's Travis, that's awesome. I appreciate you hopping on, and I know that we work with so many clients together.
Mm.
If somebody's out there looking at a house and they want to get that extra bit of expertise, like, hey, am I buying a lemon or am I buying a great reno target? Can they reach out to you and just get a second opinion from an expert like you?
100%. I got
Awesome.
into this business to help people out because homes are people's biggest investment of most of their lives. And it's very, very important to me that people are able to be happy with what they've purchased and be happy with the projects that they're about to
Cool.
take on. So
All right. Well, we're going to tag you in this post so that people can drop you a line. Thanks so much for popping on, and I'll let you get back to the job site there. Have a great day.
great. Thanks a lot, James. We'll talk to you soon.